He promised to protect me. Then he fell for me. The first sign that something was wrong came disguised as coincidence. Lena Hart noticed it on a Tuesday morning, the kind of morning that felt too ordinary to hold danger. The cafe near her apartment was crowded, the barista already tired, the line inching forward with familiar impatience. She stood near the window, phone in hand, half listening to a podcast she didn't really care about. She felt the stare before she saw it. Across the street, reflected faintly in the glass, a man stood beside a parked sedan. Dark jacket, sunglasses despite the overcast sky. He wasn't doing anything remarkable, just standing there, but his posture was wrong. Too still, too aware. Lena shifted, angling her body slightly. The man didn't move. Her stomach tightened. She told herself she was being paranoid, that living alone in a city like this trained women to invent threats where none existed. She stepped forward with the line, ordered her coffee, laughed politely when the barista made a joke. When she turned back toward the window, the man was gone. Relief came too fast. It didn't last. By noon, coincidence had become pattern. She exited the office building where she worked as a legal analyst, nothing glamorous, nothing high profile, and spotted the same sedan idling across the street. This time, the windows were tinted too dark to see inside. Her colleague, Mark, bumped her shoulder lightly. "You spacing out again?" She forced a smile. "Just tired." "Long week," he said. "You heading straight home?" "Yeah." She wasn't. Lena took 3 wrong turns on purpose, ducking into a bookstore, then out through the side exit, crossing the street twice in quick succession. She watched reflections, counted footsteps. The sedan never reappeared. By the time she reached her apartment building, her pulse had slowed, but not enough. That night, she locked her door and checked it twice. The message arrived at 2:17 a.m. No notification sound, no vibration. Just light. Her phone screen glowed softly on the nightstand, pulling her from shallow sleep. Unknown number. She frowned, heart already picking up speed, and opened it. "You shouldn't walk alone anymore." 14 words. No punctuation. Her breath caught. She typed back before she could stop herself. "Who is this?" The reply came instantly. "Someone who's been watching you." The phone slipped from her fingers and landed on the bed. Lena sat up, chest tight, listening to the hum of the city outside her window. Every sound suddenly felt too loud, too close. She reached for the phone again, fingers trembling. The message thread was gone. Not deleted. Gone. She stared at the blank screen, throat dry. "This isn't happening," she whispered to the empty room. But it was. By morning, fear had sharpened into resolve. Lena didn't cry. She didn't freeze. She dressed carefully, choosing clothes she could move in, hair pulled back tight. She memorized exits, checked the hallway before stepping out. At work, she closed her office door and made the call she'd been avoiding. "Ms. Hart," the voice on the other end said after a brief pause. "This is unexpected." "I know," Lena replied evenly. "But I wouldn't be calling if it wasn't necessary." Silence stretched. Finally, he spoke again. "What exactly happened?" She told him. All of it. The man, the car, the message. When she finished, there was no immediate response. Then, "You need protection." "I need information," Lena said. "Who would do this? Why now?" "That's not a conversation we have over the phone." Her jaw tightened. "You said if anything ever happened." "I did," he interrupted, tone firm now. "And I'm invoking that favor." She closed her eyes briefly. "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means," he said, "you're coming with us. Today." "I can't just disappear." "You can," he replied. "And you should." The line went dead. Ethan Blackwood was in the middle of a board meeting when his head of security leaned in and murmured, "We have a situation." Ethan didn't look up from the presentation. Define situation. Female. Late 20s. Credible threat. Name's Lena Hart. That got his attention. He lifted his gaze slowly. "Hart?" "Yes." The room continued around them, voices, charts, projections, but Ethan's focus narrowed. "Why is she flagged under my network?" he asked quietly. "Because 5 years ago," his security chief replied, "you authorized a standing contingency. Family adjacent. Non-negotiable." Ethan leaned back in his chair. Where is she now? Leaving her office. We can intercept. He considered for exactly 2 seconds. Do it, he said, discreetly. And you? I'll meet her. The black SUV pulled up beside Lena just as she stepped onto the sidewalk. She noticed immediately, not because of panic but because it moved with intent. The passenger window rolled down. "Ms. Art," a man said, his expression professional, unreadable. "Please don't be alarmed." "I am," she replied, stopping short. "Who are you?" "Security. We're here to escort you." "I didn't agree to." The rear door opened. Another voice cut in. "Lena." She froze. Slowly, she turned. Ethan Blackwood stood a few feet away, phone in hand, suit immaculate, expression carved from calm authority. Recognition flickered across her face, surprise, then something tighter. "You," she said. "Yes," he replied. "Me." Her shoulders squared. "I didn't ask for you." "No," he said calmly. "But you're getting me anyway." She laughed, sharp and humorless. "That figures." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You're being watched." "I know. You're not as invisible as you think." "I never claimed to be." He studied her face, really studied it now. The tension around her eyes. The way she held herself ready to bolt or fight. "You shouldn't be standing here," he said. "Not exposed." She met his gaze. "I don't take orders well." "That's not an order," he replied. "It's a fact." A pause. Cars passed. Pedestrians glanced, uninterested. "You're going to get in the vehicle," Ethan continued evenly. "You're going to come somewhere secure, and you're going to let us keep you alive." "And if I refuse?" His jaw tightened slightly. "Then I'll still make sure you're safe," he said. "You'll just hate me for it." She searched his face for threat. Found only certainty. "Fine," she said finally. "But understand this, I don't belong to you." Ethan opened the door for her. "Good," he said. "Neither do I." As the SUV pulled away from the curb, Lena stared straight ahead, heart pounding. She didn't know what scared her more. The fact that the threat was real, or the certainty that Ethan Blackwood had just stepped into her life, and nothing about it would ever be simple again. The drive was quiet in the way only expensive cars could manage. No engine growl, no rattling, just a smooth, deliberate glide through the city, glass tinted dark enough to turn the outside world into a moving blur. Lena sat in the back seat, spine straight, hands folded in her lap, not because she was calm, but because she refused to look rattled. Across from her, Ethan Blackwood sat angled slightly toward the window, one arm resting along the door, the other holding his phone. He hadn't looked at her since they pulled away from the curb. That annoyed her more than if he had. "So," Lena said, finally breaking the silence, "is this the part where you explain what's actually happening, or do I just wait to be locked somewhere and handed a rulebook?" Ethan didn't look at her when he replied. "You're not being locked anywhere." "That's comforting," she said dryly. "You just brought private security and an unmarked SUV to collect me off a public sidewalk." "You were exposed," he said, "and now you're not." She turned toward him. "You say that like it's supposed to make me feel grateful. It's supposed to make you feel alive." That got her attention. She studied his profile, the calm set of his jaw, the absence of tension in his shoulders. A man who didn't rush because the world waited for him by default. "I didn't consent to this level of intervention," she said. "You consented the moment you made the call," he replied. "You just didn't like the answer." The SUV slowed, then turned through a private gate Lena hadn't noticed before. The city vanished behind tall stone walls, replaced by manicured hedges and a long, winding drive. Her pulse quickened despite herself. "This isn't a hotel," she said. "No." "A safe house?" Ethan finally turned to look at her. "A residence." She laughed quietly. "Of course it is." The vehicle came to a smooth stop in front of a modern structure of glass and steel, lights glowing warm against the darkening sky. It was beautiful in the way wealth often was, clean, intentional, intimidating. The door opened. Ethan stepped out first, then extended a hand, not to help her but to signal patience. To wait. She ignored it and climbed out on her own. His mouth twitched. Inside, the space was expansive but not ostentatious. High ceilings. Clean lines. Art that looked curated rather than sentimental. Everything had a place. Including her, apparently. This is temporary, Lena said as they walked. Yes, Ethan replied. You keep saying that like it makes it better. It makes it honest. They stopped near a large island in the open kitchen. Two men in suits stood discreetly near the far wall. Security, she assumed. One woman with an earpiece nodded to Ethan and left the room. Before you say anything else, Lena said, turning to face him fully now, I need to be clear. You waited. I don't need a keeper, she said. I don't need someone watching my every move. Ethan met her gaze steadily. You need protection. From what? That's what we're determining. She crossed her arms. And until then? Until then, he said, you stay here. There it was. The line she'd been waiting for. And if I don't? His voice lowered, not threatening, but firm. Then I assign someone to you 24/7 and we do this the hard way. Her jaw tightened. You'd force it. I'd survive your anger, he said calmly. You might not survive the alternative. Silence settled between them, thick and charged. Finally, she exhaled sharply. You're infuriating. He inclined his head slightly. I've been told. A pause. Then softer. I didn't want it to be like this. That surprised her. She studied his face again, looking for performance. Found none. Why do you care? She asked quietly. Ethan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped past her, gesturing toward the hallway. Your room is this way. That wasn't an answer. Her room was larger than her entire apartment. King-sized bed, seating area, bathroom with a tub that looked like it belonged in a magazine, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, different angle, same glittering sprawl. This is excessive, Lena said. It's secure, Ethan replied. Windows are reinforced. Balcony access is locked. So I can see the world but not touch it. That's one way to put it. She turned back to him. What about my job? Taken care of. Her eyes narrowed. You don't get to decide that. I didn't, he said. I facilitated. You interfered. Yes. She stared at him, heat flaring in her chest. You do this a lot, don't you? Decide what's best and bulldoze everything else. His gaze didn't waver. I do what's necessary. For you. For outcomes, he corrected. She laughed softly, shaking her head. Unbelievable. You're angry, he observed. Brilliant deduction. And tired. Try being uprooted under implied threat, she shot back. It does things to a person. Something shifted in his expression, then subtle, but real. You'll have autonomy, he said. Within reason. There it is again, she snapped. Within reason. Your reason. Our reason, he said. She stepped closer, invading his carefully measured space. You don't know me well enough to decide what that is. He didn't move back. No, he agreed quietly. But I will. The words settled between them, heavier than they should have been. A beat passed. Then Ethan cleared his throat, stepping away first. Security will brief you, he said. Dinner is in an hour. Eat. You're very fond of telling me what to do. And you're very fond of doing the opposite. Her lips curved despite herself. Careful. He paused at the door. Of what? Assuming I'm predictable. A corner of his mouth lifted barely. I don't. Later, over dinner, the tension shifted. They sat across from each other at a long table that felt absurdly formal for two people who barely knew each other. Plates arrived quietly, prepared by someone Lena never saw. So she said, gesturing with her fork. Rules. Ethan nodded. You don't leave the property alone. Expected. You don't post your location online. I don't. You tell us if anything feels off. She hesitated. Even if I think I'm imagining it? Especially then. She studied him. You're serious. Deadly. She swallowed. And you? What about me? Do you follow rules? A pause. I make them, he said. She snorted. Figures. The silence that followed wasn't awkward this time. It was curious. Why haven't you asked who might be behind this? Ethan asked suddenly. She set her fork down. Because if I say the names out loud, they become real. He watched her carefully. You already know. I have suspicions. And? And I'm hoping I'm wrong. He nodded slowly. We'll find out. She met his gaze. You sound confident. I am. Why? Because no one threatens someone under my protection, he said evenly and walks away untouched. Her breath caught. That's a promise, he added. Something about the way he said it quiet, certain sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with fear. She looked away first. That night, Lena stood at the window again, watching the city from behind reinforced glass. Somewhere in the penthouse, Ethan moved footsteps distant, controlled. Always present. Always aware. Protector. Warden. Something else she didn't have a word for yet. The rule had been simple. Clear. Calm. Delivered without drama. Ms. Hart, the head of security, had said that morning, his tone respectful, but firm. We strongly advise you not to leave the east wing of the property today. We're running a sweep. Lena had smiled politely. I understand. She had meant none of it. By mid-afternoon, the house felt too quiet, too controlled, like the walls themselves were listening. She wondered. At first, it was harmless, bare feet on polished floors, fingers trailing along cool surfaces. Then she found the glass corridor leading to the private garden. Sunlight poured in, tempting and warm, the greenery beyond vibrant and alive. A door stood between her and it. Lock. She stared at it for a long moment. Then she noticed the keypad. Of course, she muttered. It took less than a minute to bypass it. The security system was sophisticated, but not built for someone who had spent years navigating restricted access and loopholes for a living. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Lena stepped outside. The air hit her like freedom. She breathed deeply, eyes closing for just a second, long enough to miss the way movement stilled near the house. Long enough to miss Ethan Blackwood rounding the corner. He stopped the moment he saw her. Still. Silent. Watching. Lena opened her eyes and turned and froze. He stood several yards away, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, expression unreadable. Not angry yet. Something worse. Control? You were told not to come out here, he said. His voice was calm. Too calm? She straightened. I wasn't told by you. That doesn't matter? It does to me. He took a step closer. Every instinct in her screamed that she'd done something irrevocable. Security protocols aren't suggestions, Ethan said. They exist for a reason. She lifted her chin. Then maybe they should be explained instead of enforced like I'm a prisoner. His jaw tightened. You were asked, he said, to stay inside. I don't take orders from people who won't even tell me why. Another step. The distance between them shrank, and with it, the air seemed to thicken. This isn't about control, he said. It's about safety. You keep saying that, she snapped. And you keep expecting me to believe it without question. His gaze sharpened. You think this is a game? I think you're used to people obeying without pushback. That did it. Ethan stopped directly in front of her, close enough now that she could see the muscle jumping in his jaw, the restraint etched into every line of him. You don't get to endanger yourself to prove a point, he said quietly. Her heart slammed against her ribs, but she didn't step back. And you don't get to scare me into compliance, she shot back. A beat. Then his voice dropped, low and lethal. I'm not scaring you. She swallowed. I'm stopping myself from doing worse. The words hit her like a physical force. Not shouted. Not dramatic. Admitted. Silence stretched, fragile and charged. Finally, she whispered, You're angry. Yes. One word. Unfiltered. Her pulse skidded. Because I disobeyed you? She asked. No, he said. Because if something had happened to you out here, I would have been too late. That was the moment. The shift. The anger wasn't about authority. It was about fear. She saw it then, barely contained, tightly leashed, dangerous not because it was wild, but because it was discipline. I didn't think. She began. No, he interrupted sharply. You didn't. His hand lifted, not touching her, stopping just inches from her arm, close enough that she could feel the heat of him. Do not do that again, he said. Not to my security. Not to me. Her breath came shallow. Or what? His eyes darkened. Or I stop asking, he said. And you won't like how that feels. Her entire body reacted to that fear, anger, something else curling low and hot in her stomach. She held his gaze. I won't be controlled, she said. His hand dropped. Good, he replied, because if you were, this wouldn't be a problem. She frowned. What does that mean? It means, he said evenly, you don't break rules unless you're desperate to prove you still have a choice. Her throat tightened. He stepped back, distance snapping into place like a locked door. Go inside, he said. Now. This time she didn't argue. As she passed him, she felt at the weight of his attention following her, the tension unresolved, humming like a live wire. And behind her, Ethan stood very still, reminding himself of something dangerous and necessary. Protection required distance. And he was starting to want what he shouldn't. Next morning, Lena woke to silence that felt engineered. Not the peaceful kind, the curated, watchful kind that pressed in on her senses the moment she opened her eyes. The curtains were already drawn back to the precise inch she preferred. Sunlight spilled across the room in a controlled band, stopping just short of her pillow. The air was cool, adjusted overnight. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. She lay still for a moment, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the faint vibration of her phone on the bedside table. Nothing. Her jaw tightened. She reached for it anyway, thumb swiping across the screen with more force than necessary. No signal. No notifications. No missed calls. Unbelievable, she muttered. Yesterday had been inconvenient, annoying, transparent in its intent. This felt escalated. She swung her legs over the side of the bed and stood, padding across the room. The bathroom lights turned on automatically, the mirror already defogged, her favorite towel folded exactly where it should be. She stared at her reflection. He hadn't taken away comfort. He'd taken away choice. That was worse. The house has shifted. She dressed quickly and stepped into the hallway. 2 security personnel stood where there had been none the day before. They didn't look at her. They didn't speak. They simply existed. Lena slowed. Is something going on? One of them inclined his head. Routine adjustment, ma'am. That phrase again. Routine. As if her entire world hadn't subtly tilted overnight. She continued down the corridor toward the elevator, already knowing how this would go and still feeling a flare of irritation when the doors refused her again. Access denied. She exhaled sharply through her nose. Fine. She turned toward the stairs instead. Halfway down, a discreet but firm voice stopped her. MS. Hart. She looked back. Yes. The lower staircase is closed. Closed? She laughed once. It's a staircase. Yes, ma'am. For what reason? The guard hesitated, clearly choosing his words carefully. Mr. Blackwood requested that all movement between levels be supervised today. Supervised. Her chest tightened. I'm not a child. No, ma'am. Then why am I being treated like one? The guard didn't answer. Which was, she realized, an answer in itself. The dining room was bright and airy, sunlight reflecting off polished surfaces. Breakfast waited on the table again, beautiful, balanced, infuriatingly thoughtful. Everything she liked. Except the thing she loved. She sat, scanning the spread. No coffee. No pastries. No indulgences. She pressed the call button harder than necessary. A staff member appeared, smiling politely. Good morning, Miss Hart. Coffee, Lena said. Not a question. I'm sorry. That's not available this morning. Why? The woman's smile faltered just a fraction. Mr. Blackwood's instructions. Lena leaned back in her chair. Did he give a reason, or does he just enjoy controlling caffeine intake now too? The staff member flushed. He said it would be better for you. Better? She laughed, sharp and humorless. Of course he did. She stood without touching the food. Please let him know I skipped breakfast, she said, since he's so invested. She didn't see Ethan until nearly noon. He was crossing the atrium, speaking quietly with someone from his legal team, his stride unhurried, his expression composed. As always. Lena watched him for a long moment before stepping directly into his path. He stopped instantly. The person with him froze, glanced between them, then wisely excused himself. Ethan's attention settled fully on her. "Good morning," he said. Her lips pressed together. "You've turned the house into a maze." "No," he replied calmly. "I simplified it." She stared at him. "By removing my autonomy? By removing risk? By removing me from decisions about my own life?" His gaze sharpened, not angry but focused. "You were warned." "So that's it?" she asked. "I disobey once and suddenly I'm living in a velvet cage?" Something flickered in his eyes then. Not guilt. Concern. "Don't dramatize," he said quietly. "You're safe, comfortable, provided for." And monitored, she shot back. "Restricted, managed." "Yes," he said simply. The bluntness of it knocked the air from her lungs. She searched his face for apology. Found none. "This won't work," she said. "I know," he replied. Her brows knit. "Then why do it?" "Because what you want right now," he said evenly, "is incompatible with keeping you alive." Silence stretched between them. Her anger wavered, just slightly, under the weight of his certainty. "That's not your call," she said finally. "No," he agreed, "but it is my responsibility." There it was again. That word. It sat between them, heavy and charged. She turned away before he could see the tremor in her hands. Lena tested the limits all afternoon. She tried doors she knew would be locked. She asked questions she knew wouldn't be answered. She requested meetings, errands, distractions. Every request was denied politely. Every denial traced back to the same source. By late afternoon, frustration coiled tight in her chest, not explosive, but aching. He wasn't reacting. He wasn't rising to the bait. He was waiting. That unsettled her more than outright force ever could. It was early evening when it happened. She was standing near the terrace doors, staring out at the city beyond the glass, when a sudden sound, sharp, metallic, rang out from below. A bang. Then shouting. Her body reacted before her mind caught up. She froze. Her breath caught, shallow and fast. The room felt smaller. Footsteps thundered toward her. Ethan was there in seconds. He didn't ask what was wrong. Didn't explain. He simply stepped in front of her, one hand lifting instinctively, palm open near her shoulder, not touching, but close enough that she felt the heat of him. "Stay behind me," he said. Not a command. A reflex. The noise below resolved quickly, security handling something mundane, contain. But Ethan didn't move right away. And neither did she. For a brief, suspended moment, the world narrowed to the space between them. His presence was solid, immovable, protective in a way that made her chest ache. When he finally stepped back, he seemed to realize how close he was. His hand dropped. His jaw tightened. "You're safe," he said, quieter now. She swallowed. "I didn't ask for this." "I know. But you're doing it anyway." "Yes." She looked up at him, eyes sharp despite the tremor still moving through her. "You don't get to decide when I need saving." His gaze held hers, intense and unreadable. "No," he said, "but I do get to decide when I won't risk losing you." The words hung between them, too intimate, too revealing. She stepped back first. "This doesn't mean I forgive you," she said. "I'm not asking you to," he replied. And for the first time since this began, his restraint looked like it was costing him something. Lena was halfway through the east corridor the next morning, irritation still simmering from the quiet restrictions of the past 2 days, when she noticed the shift in the air. Not a sound. A pause. The kind that made instincts prickle before logic could catch up. She slowed. The corridor ahead was empty, but too empty. The usual presence of security at either end was gone. No footsteps. No voices through the walls. Her shoulders tightened. She took one more step. That was when the man stepped out from the recessed doorway near the service hall. He moved fast. Too fast. Lena barely had time to register the glint of something metallic in his hand before a body slammed into hers from the side. "Ethan?" He didn't shout her name. Didn't warn. He simply grabbed her, spun, and shoved her hard against the wall, his back to her, his body a shield she hadn't asked for, but couldn't escape. The impact knocked the breath from her lungs. "Stay down," he said sharply. She heard the scuffle before she saw it, boots skidding, a grunt, the crack of a fist connecting with bone. Ethan moved with brutal efficiency, one hand still braced against the wall near her head, the other striking out with controlled violence. It was over in seconds. Security flooded the corridor, voices overlapping, commands snapping into place. Lena barely noticed. Her eyes were fixed on Ethan. He hadn't moved yet. His breathing was steady but wrong, controlled in a way that suggested effort. When he finally stepped away from her, she saw it. Blood. A dark line seeping through the fabric at his side, spreading slowly across his shirt. Her stomach dropped. "Ethan," she said, the word leaving her mouth before she realized she'd spoken. He turned his head slightly. "You're fine. You're bleeding." "It's nothing." He took a step forward. Stagger. Just barely, but enough that she noticed. She reached for him instinctively. He caught her wrist midair. Not roughly. Firmly. "Don't," he said. The word was quiet. Final. Her fingers curled helplessly in his grip. "You're hurt?" "I've been worse." "That's not the point." His gaze locked onto hers, then sharp, controlled, unreadable. "It is the point." Security closed in, someone speaking urgently into a radio. Ethan released her wrist and straightened, posture snapping back into place like pain was an inconvenience he refused to acknowledge. "Take her upstairs," he ordered. "I'm not going anywhere," Lena snapped. He turned fully to face her now. And for the first time since she'd met him, his control cracked, not with anger, but with something harder. Fear. Not for himself. For her. "You are," he said, low and dangerous. "Now." She stared at him, chest tight. "You don't get to order me around like that." "I do when someone tries to get close enough to hurt you." "I didn't ask you to." "I know," he cut in. His jaw tightened. "That's the problem." Another wave of pain crossed his face before he could hide it. Her voice dropped. "You need medical attention." "I'll handle it." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Stop acting like this didn't matter." His eyes darkened. "It didn't." "That's a lie." He leaned in just enough that only she could hear him. "This is the part where you walk away," he said quietly. "Because if you stay, you'll feel responsible and you're not." Her throat burned. "You got hurt because of me." "No," he said immediately. "I got hurt because I was standing where I chose to stand." She shook her head. "You don't get to bleed for me and pretend it means nothing." Something in his expression tightened painfully. "Lena," he said, her name weighted now, deliberate, "don't confuse protection with permission." Her breath caught. "Permission for what?" she asked. "For closeness," he said. "For comfort. For something I can't afford to take from you." She stared at him, stunned. "You think this is about you wanting something?" "I know it is," he replied. The honesty of it hit harder than any raised voice. She reached for him again, slower this time, palm open, stopping just short of his chest. "Let me help," she said. His gaze dropped to her hand. For one unbearable second, she thought he might let her. Instead, he stepped back. The distance felt violent. "No," he said. "That's not what you want from me." "You don't know what I want." "I know you don't want to own me," he said quietly. "And I won't turn blood into leverage." Her chest ached. Security returned with urgency, a medic hovering uncertainly. Ethan turned away from her. "Get her out of here," he ordered. She didn't resist this time. As she was escorted away, she looked back once. Ethan stood rigid, blood still darkening his side, his face carefully blank as the medic spoke to him. He didn't look at her? Not once. And that, more than the injury, more than the danger, was what finally made her realize how much he was already holding back. Ethan vanished. Not abruptly. Not dramatically. Just systematically. By the third day after the incident, Lena noticed the pattern. He no longer escorted her anywhere. Meetings were reassigned. Routes were adjusted. Instructions came through intermediaries, brief, impersonal, efficient. When she entered a room, he was already leaving. When she turned a corner, he had taken a different one. It was deliberate. She told herself she didn't care. That she preferred it this way. but the quiet where he used to be felt louder than his presence ever had. Her new detail was a man named Marcus. He was younger than Ethan by at least a decade, less intimidating, easier to read. He smiled when he spoke, didn't loom, didn't carry the same unspoken gravity in his silence. On their first morning together, Marcus cleared his throat awkwardly as they waited for the elevator. "So," he said, glancing at the digital floor numbers, "I hear you don't like being told what not to do." Lena snorted before she could stop herself. "Is that what they're saying now?" "Something like that," he replied, lips twitching. "Don't worry. I'm not here to lecture. Just walk and watch." She studied him for a moment. "That's it?" "That's it." The simplicity was disarming. They walked in companionable silence after that. No tension. No unspoken rules. When she paused to admire the city through the glass corridor, Marcus stopped too. Didn't rush her. Didn't come in. She felt herself relax. It surprised her. Over the next few days, it became routine. Marcus learned her habits quickly, how she liked her coffee, which meetings drained her most, when she preferred quiet. He asked questions, but not invasive ones. Listened when she answered. One afternoon, she really laughed at something he said about a malfunctioning security camera that had given up on life. The sound echoed down the hallway. Ethan heard it. He was halfway through a briefing 2 corridors away when it reached him, light, unguarded, unmistakably hers. His jaw tightened. He didn't turn, but his focus fractured. Later that evening, Lena and Marcus sat on the edge of the private terrace, the city glowing beneath them. She hadn't been here since Ethan restricted it, then quietly lifted the restriction without telling her. Marcus leaned back against the railing. "You okay?" She considered lying, decided against it. "He's avoiding me," she said simply. Marcus didn't ask who. He nodded once. "Yeah." That surprised her. "You noticed?" "I notice patterns," he said lightly. Then, more carefully, "and I notice when someone's trying very hard not to notice someone else." She looked out at the skyline. "He thinks he's protecting me by disappearing." Marcus was quiet for a beat. "Is he wrong?" Her chest tightened. "That's the problem. I don't know." They stood there for a while, the silence comfortable. Too comfortable. Across the terrace, unseen by either of them, Ethan stood in the shadowed doorway. He hadn't meant to stop. Hadn't meant to watch. But there she was, leaning slightly toward Marcus, shoulders loose, expression open in a way he hadn't seen since before the incident. Before him. Marcus said something softly. Lena smiled again, smaller this time, more intimate. Ethan's fingers curled slowly at his side. Not jealousy. He didn't allow himself that word. This was displacement. He had removed himself from her orbit, and someone else had stepped neatly into the space he left behind. As planned. As necessary. As unbearable. Later that night, Marcus walked Lena to her door. "Same time tomorrow?" he asked. She hesitated, just for a second. Then nodded. "Yeah, same time." The door closed behind her. Ethan stood at the end of the hall, hidden in plain sight, watching the light under her door fade. He told himself this was success. She was safe, calm, laughing, not looking at him. But as he turned away, the thought that followed was uninvited and dangerous. If she doesn't need me anymore, what exactly am I protecting her from? The storm wasn't forecasted. That was the problem. By late afternoon, the sky had shifted from pale gray to bruised charcoal, rain slamming against the glass walls of the building with sudden violence. Thunder rolled low and close, rattling the upper floors. Security protocols changed instantly. Elevators restricted. External movement suspended. Personnel reassigned. Ethan was halfway through issuing revised instructions when his earpiece crackled. Main east stairwell is compromised. Flooding on levels 12 through 9. He closed his eyes briefly. Route. A pause. Then. Sir, Lena is already en route. With Marcus. Ethan's jaw tightened. Where? Private conference suite. Level 14. Power fluctuation locked the doors. The room went very still. "I'm going," Ethan said. There was no argument. No hesitation. Just action. Lena felt the door seal before she heard it. A soft, mechanical click. Lights flickered once, then stabilized, dimmer than before. The conference suite was large, but enclosed, glass walls now opaque as rain streaked down the outside. Marcus tested the panel. Locked. She exhaled slowly. Of course it is. Backup will override it, he said, trying for calm. Might take a bit. Thunder cracked overhead. Minutes pass. Then footsteps. Heavy, familiar. Lena didn't turn at first. She didn't need to. The air changed when Ethan entered, denser, charged, like everything in the room had snapped to attention. Marcus, Ethan said evenly. Marcus straightened instinctively. Sir. You're needed in operations. Now. Marcus hesitated, glancing at Lena. She's. I know where she is, Ethan said. Not sharp. Not raised. Final. Marcus nodded once. I'll be right outside. The door slid shut behind him. And suddenly, there was nowhere to go. Lena folded her arms loosely, staring at the rain-smeared glass. So she said, this is new. Ethan remained several feet away. Too far to touch. Too close to pretend distance meant anything. I didn't plan this, he said. She let out a quiet laugh. Funny, that's what you've been doing best lately. Silence. Not comfortable. Not explosive. Just tight. You disappeared, she continued, still not looking at him. No warning. No explanation. You were safer, he replied. She turned then, eyes sharp. With no say? His jaw flexed. Yes. The honesty hit harder than an apology would have. You don't get to decide my world like that, she said, voice steady, but strained. You don't get to pull away and expect me to just pause. I didn't expect anything. That's worse. Thunder boomed again, closer this time. The lights dimmed another notch. Ethan took a step closer, then stopped himself. I saw you, he said quietly. Her breath caught despite herself. Saw me doing what? Laughing. The word landed heavy between them. With Marcus, he added, you looked lighter. She swallowed. You left a space. He stepped into it. I know. The admission surprised them both. She steadied his face, really looked at him for the first time in days. The tension in his shoulders. The restraint wound tight as wire. You don't get to vanish and still feel entitled to anything, she said softly. I don't feel entitled, he replied. I feel responsible. For what? He met her gaze then, unwavering. For the moment you stop looking over your shoulder and realize I'm not there. Her chest tightened. The room felt smaller, warmer. The door buzzed faintly, still locked. Force. Proximity. Neither of them move. You can't protect me by erasing yourself, she said. Ethan's voice dropped. And I can't stay if wanting you compromises you. The truth of it vibrated between them, raw, dangerous. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, neither of them knew who would break first. And for the first time since he'd stepped away, Ethan didn't retreat. He stayed. Right there. With her. The lights flickered again. Not off just enough to make the room feel unsteady, like the building itself was holding its breath. Lena shifted her weight, suddenly aware of how close Ethan actually was. Not touching. Not crowding. But close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, the quiet gravity he carried even when he said nothing. You keep doing that, she said softly. Ethan frowned slightly. Doing what? Standing like you're about to say something important, then swallowing it. His gaze dropped to her mouth before he could stop himself. He looked away immediately. I'm trying not to make this harder than it already is, he said. She let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. You disappearing made it harder. This, she gestured vaguely between them. This is just honest. Silence stretched again. Thicker now. Ethan's hand lifted, slow, deliberate, then stopped inches from her arm. He didn't touch her, didn't let himself. I shouldn't, he said quietly. Her pulse hammered. You keep saying that. His voice dropped lower. Because if I don't say it out loud, I might forget. She turned fully toward him then, their bodies nearly aligned. Forget what? That wanting you isn't the same as being good for you. The words landed heavy. Lena swallowed. You don't get to decide that alone. I do when my choices put you in danger. She shook her head, frustration bleeding into something rawer. You think I don't already live with danger? You think I didn't before you? Ethan's jaw tightened. His hand flexed again, closer now, so close she could feel the heat of his skin. I think, he said slowly, that if anything happened to you because of me, I wouldn't survive it. Her breath caught. That's not protection, she whispered. That's fear. His eyes snapped to hers. Yes. The admission was bare, unshielded. For a moment neither of them moved. The space between them felt electric, fragile, like a single wrong breath would shatter it. Lena lifted her hand this time. She brushed her fingers not even against his skin, but against the air just beside his wrist. A question. Ethan's breath hitched. He leaned in before he could stop himself. Not fast. Not desperate. Just enough that she could feel it, the pull, the inevitability. If I cross this line, he murmured, voice rough, I don't know if I can step back again. Her voice was barely audible. Then don't. Their foreheads almost touched. Almost. The door buzzed sharply. Once. Twice. Then loud. Sir? Marcus's voice came through the intercom, tense. We've got a situation. Now. Ethan froze. The moment shattered. He stepped back instantly, like he'd been burned. Lena's hand dropped to her side, fingers curling slowly as reality rushed back in. What happened? She asked, already knowing. Ethan straightened, the protector snapping back into place with practiced ease. Threat update. We need to move. She searched his face looking for the man who'd almost confessed, almost touched her. He didn't look away this time. But he didn't reach for her either. As the door unlocked and Marcus stepped in, Ethan turned slightly, positioning himself between Lena and the world again. Professional. Control. But his voice, when he spoke, was low and unmistakably strained. This conversation isn't over. She met his gaze, heart still racing. No, she agreed. It isn't. And that was somehow worse than if it had been. Next morning, the alarm didn't scream. It clicked sharp and precise like a lock snapping into place. Ethan was already moving before the sound fully registered. His hand went up, palm flat, signaling everyone in the corridor to stop. The security team froze mid-step. Lena, he said, voice low but cutting clean through the noise, don't move. She was 2 steps behind him. Too far. What is it? She asked, trying to look past his shoulder. Eyes on me, he ordered. That was the rule he'd set from day one, distance. No touching unless absolutely necessary. No physical contact unless she was already in danger. The problem was danger didn't always announce itself politely. The second click came from behind them. Different. Closer. Ethan turned just in time to see the service door at the end of the hall crack open. Not wide. Just enough. He swore under his breath. Marcus, he said quietly, take the right. Now. Marcus moved. Too slow. The man stepped out of the doorway with something metallic in his hand. Not a gun, worse. Improvised. Unpredictable. Lena inhaled sharply. That sound small, involuntary snap something in Ethan's chest. He didn't think. He didn't weigh options. He didn't calculate optics or rules or distance. He turned and grabbed her. Her. One arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her flush against him as he spun them both sideways, putting his body between her and the thread in one smooth, brutal motion. Her back hit the wall. His hand came up instantly, cradling the back of her head, pressing her face into his chest. Don't look, he said, voice rough. Don't move. She felt him then solid, unyielding, hammering hard enough that it vibrated against her cheek. The man lunged. Security swarm. Shouts. Impact. The sharp sound of something clattering across tile. Lena didn't see any of it. All she knew was Ethan too close, too firm, his grip unbreakable as chaos unfolded around them. It was over in seconds. But Ethan didn't release her. Even when Marcus gave the all-clear. Even when the hallway fell silent except for the ringing aftermath of adrenaline. Ethan, Marcus said carefully. He's restrained. Still nothing. Lena's hands were braced against Ethan's chest now, fingers curled into his jacket. She could feel how tense he was, every muscle locked, every breath measured too tightly. Ethan, she said, softer. That did it. He looked down at her. And for the first time since he'd taken this assignment, he didn't hide what was on his face. Fear. Raw. Unfiltered. Barely contained. He loosened his grip like he just realized what he was doing, but didn't step away. Not immediately. You okay? He asked, voice low, urgent. She nodded. I think so. His thumb shifted at the base of her skull, just slightly. Not protective now. Grounding. That wasn't. He stopped himself, closed his eyes for half a second. That wasn't supposed to happen. Her pulse was still racing. What wasn't? This, he said, gesturing between them without actually letting go. I crossed a line. You stopped someone from hurting me. That's not the line I'm talking about. Silence pressed in around them. Security pretended very hard not to exist. Lena studied his face, how close it was, how controlled it usually was, how fractured it looked now. You told me you'd protect me, she said quietly. Yes. You didn't say you'd do it from a distance. His jaw tightened. That distance is what keeps this clean, he said. It's what keeps you safe from complications. She swallowed. From you. He didn't deny it. His hand dropped from her head then, slow and deliberate, like he was forcing himself to let go. I won't let that happen again, he said. The words were firm. But his eyes betrayed him. Because they both knew the truth now. When it mattered. When she was actually at risk. Ethan would break every rule he'd written for himself. It was late night, the building was nearly silent by the time Lena finished reviewing the last document. Most of the lights on her floor had dimmed automatically, leaving only the soft glow from her desk lamp and the city lights bleeding in through the windows. The glass reflected her faintly tired eyes, hair pulled loose from its tie, shoulders aching from a day that had stretched too long. She didn't expect him to still be there. When she stood and opened her office door, she found Ethan leaning against the far wall of the corridor, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, phone dark in his hand. Waiting. You're still here, she said, unable to keep the surprise from her voice. He straightened immediately. Yes. A pause. That wasn't a question, she added. I know. He glanced at his watch as if only just realizing the hour, then back at her. The team rotated out. I told them I'd cover the rest of the night. She frowned slightly. That's not necessary. I know. There it was again. That refusal to explain. She stepped fully into the hallway, locking her office behind her. The click echoed too loudly in the quiet. Ethan, she said, softer now, you don't have to stay. He met her gaze. Didn't look away this time. I want to. The words landed gently and still managed to unsettle her. Neither of them moved. The city hummed distantly beyond the glass. Somewhere below, a car horn sounded and faded. The rest of the world felt far away, as if the night had folded in on itself to give them this narrow pocket of quiet. You've been avoiding me, she said. His jaw tightened. I've been giving you space. That's not the same thing. I think it is when I'm the problem. She crossed her arms, studying him. You don't get to decide that either. A beat passed. Then another. He exhaled slowly as if choosing his words with care. I stayed because today wasn't resolved. Her heart skipped. Resolved how? The way it ended, he said, abruptly. She tilted her head. You mean when you almost? He lifted a hand, stopping her gently. Not touching. Not quite. Please, he said quietly. Don't finish that. Why? Because if you say it out loud, I'll have to respond to it. And you don't want to? I don't trust myself to do it properly. That honesty, unvarnished and controlled, sent a shiver through her. She took a step toward him. Not close enough to touch. Close enough to feel the shift. You keep acting like wanting something is a failure, she said. For me, he replied, it usually is. She searched his face, the sharp lines softened now by exhaustion, by the absence of armor. You don't look like someone who's failing right now. He gave a short, humorless huff. That's because I'm standing very still. Her lips curved despite herself. You could leave. I could, he agreed. He didn't move. Neither did she. The silence stretched again, but it wasn't awkward. It was heavy-weighted with things unsaid, with awareness pressing in from all sides. How long were you planning to stay? She asked. As long as it took for you to be safe, he said. And now? His eyes flicked to her door, then back to her. Now I'm reassessing. She swallowed. That sounds dangerous. It is. Another pause. He shifted slightly, closing the distance by inches. Still no contact. Still restraint. I won't cross any lines tonight, he said. I need you to know that. Her voice was steady even as her pulse betrayed her. And tomorrow? A muscle in his jaw jumped. Tomorrow, he said carefully, I'll go back to pretending this is just a job. She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded once. Okay. The word seemed to surprise him. You're not going to argue? He asked. Not tonight, she said. Tonight feels fragile. He let out a slow breath. That's a good word for it. They stood there together, too close, too quiet, wrapped in a moment neither of them was ready to name. Finally, Ethan straightened, professionalism settling back over him like a coat he didn't quite want to put on. I'll walk you down, he said. She didn't comment on the fact that she hadn't asked. As they moved toward the elevator, side by side, Lena glanced at him. You know, she said lightly, staying longer than necessary is how people get attached. His gaze stayed forward, but his voice dropped. I'm aware. The elevator doors slid open. He gestured for her to enter first. The elevator doors slid shut with a muted thud. Too final. Too intimate. For a brief second, neither of them spoke. The soft whir of the elevator starting its descent felt absurdly loud in the enclosed space. Lena exhaled, then laughed under her breath. Well, this is suddenly very quiet. Ethan didn't answer immediately. He stood just behind her, close enough that she could feel his presence like a steady pressure at her back. Do you want me to step farther away? He asked. She glanced at the mirrored wall. Their reflection stared back her with her arms loosely folded, him tall and controlled, eyes fixed on her like he was bracing for impact. If you're going to, she said lightly, you should probably do it now. He didn't move. That's what I thought, she added. The corner of his mouth twitched despite himself. You're provoking me. I'm observing, she corrected. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. Provoking would involve intent. And you don't have any? He asked. She turned slowly, finally facing him. Careful, Ethan. You're the one who stayed. A B. That's not fair, he said. You're right, she agreed. It's not, but you still did it. The elevator passed another floor. The hum beneath their feet was steady, unhurried, cruelly indifferent to the tension packed into the small space. You keep acting like I dragged you here, he said. I didn't. No, she said. You volunteered. His gaze dropped briefly to her hands, her collarbone before snapping back to her eyes. That's exactly the problem. She raised an eyebrow. You volunteering? Me wanting to, he said. Silence fell again, thicker this time. Lena shifted her weight, deliberately stepping closer. Not touching. Just enough to test the boundary. He noticed immediately. His shoulders stiffened. You're doing it again, he said. Doing what? Making this harder than it needs to be. She tilted her head. Funny. From where I'm standing, it looks like you're the one complicating things. He let out a slow breath. Lena. The way he said her name low, careful, restrained sent an unwelcome thrill through her. Yes. This is exactly the kind of moment people regret later. She smiled faintly. You say that like regret is always a bad thing. For me, he said, it usually comes with consequences. The elevator gave a slight lurch as it slowed. Instinct kicked in. Lena lost her balance for half a second. Ethan moved without thinking. His hand closed around her forearm, firm and warm, protective, familiar in a way that startled them both. She looked down at his hand, then back up at him. I didn't fall, she said quietly. I know, he replied. He didn't let go. The air shifted. You're still holding me, she pointed out. Yes, he said. Is that part of the job too? His jaw tightened. No. Then why? He released her abruptly, stepping back as if burned. Because I forgot myself. The words hung between them. Lena crossed her arms again, heart pounding. That happens a lot around me? Lately, he admitted, yes. She studied him. You don't like that. I hate it. Because you're losing control? Because I don't want control to be the thing I care about most, he said sharply. Then paused, clearly regretting how much he'd revealed. The elevator chimed softly as it approached the lobby. You know, she said gently, you don't have to be so afraid of wanting things. His laugh was quiet and humorless. You say that like wanting has never ruined anyone. I say it like avoiding it ruins people too. The elevator slowed. This time neither of them moved. For a suspended second, the space between them felt unbearable, charged, expectant, fragile. You're not going to pretend this is nothing, are you? She asked. He met her gaze, unflinching. No. Good. But I'm also not going to act on it, he added. Her lips parted slightly. Why? Because if I do, he said, voice low, I won't know how to stop. The doors slid open. The bright, neutral light of the lobby rushed in, shattering the moment like glass. Ethan stepped back instantly, every trace of vulnerability gone, posture professional again. We're here, he said. Lena hesitated before stepping out. Then she turned back to him. You know, she said softly, staying when you should have left is still a choice. His eyes darkened. I'm aware. Just making sure, she said. She walked out. The doors began to close. At the last second, she heard him speak. Lena. She turned just enough to meet his eyes through the narrowing gap. Yes. This, he stopped, jaw flexing, doesn't end tonight. Her smile was slow, knowing. No, she agreed. It doesn't. The doors shut. The next day, the conference room was glass-walled and brutally bright. Lena stood at the head of the table, tablet in hand, focused, composed every inch, the woman who refused to let anyone see the cracks. She was halfway through her presentation when the door opened quietly. Ethan stepped in. He didn't look at her. Not immediately. He took his place along the wall, arms crossed, posture rigid, eyes scanning the room like this was any other briefing. Like the last 48 hours hadn't happened. Lena's fingers tightened around the tablet. She didn't miss the way he deliberately positioned himself out of her line of sight. She continued anyway. Halfway through, a senior partner interrupted sharp, dismissive. I don't see how this mitigates exposure, the man said flatly. Frankly, this feels optimistic. The word landed like a slap. Lena opened her mouth to respond, but the partner continued, voice rising. And given recent security incidents, I'm not sure this project should even be led by. He stopped short, eyes flicking to Ethan. Everyone noticed. The implication was clear. All eyes turned. This was the moment. Everyone in the room expected Ethan to speak, to correct, to protect, to do what he always did. Lena felt him hesitate. She didn't look at him. She waited. Ethan's jaw tightened. His hand flexed at his side. He could shut this down in one sentence. He could reframe it, defend her, reclaim the room. But that would mean stepping out of his role. That would mean choosing her publicly. And he didn't. I don't assess leadership decisions, Ethan said evenly. Only threat levels. The room shifted. The partner nodded, satisfied. Exactly. Lena finished the presentation. Perfectly. Professionally. Without once looking at Ethan. The meeting adjourned. People filtered out, murmuring. Ethan waited until the room was empty. Lena. She didn't stop walking. He followed her into the hallway. That wasn't. Don't, she said calmly. He froze. She turned then, eyes sharp, wounded in a way she clearly refused to soften. You don't get to explain restraint to me, she said quietly. Not today. I was maintaining professional boundaries, he said. Her laugh was soft, bitter. Congratulations. She stepped closer just enough that he could see it now, the hurt she hadn't let anyone else see. You know what the worst part is? She continued. I didn't need you to save me. His chest tightened. I needed you to not disappear. Silence stretched between them. I chose not to overstep, he said. And I paid for it, she replied. Again. She stepped back. Next time you decide to protect me by doing nothing, she added, just remember it feels exactly like abandonment. She walked away. Ethan stood there long after she was gone. Because this time, restraint didn't make him noble. It made him too late. By late afternoon, the building had shifted into its quieter rhythm. Meetings were wrapping up. Assistants lowered their voices. The sun slanted through the glass walls, turning everything gold and unreal, like a scene meant to look peaceful while something underneath rotted. Ethan stood outside Lena's office. He hadn't meant to end up there. He told himself that twice. Her door was closed. Not slammed. Just closed. The same way she'd been all day, professional, distant, unreachable. He'd seen her only once since the meeting. In the lobby. She walked past him with another executive, laughing lightly at something said. Her body language had been open, relaxed. Normal. She hadn't looked at Ethan at all. Now, standing here, he finally understood something he hadn't let himself think yesterday. Defending her hadn't been about courage. It had been about timing. And he was always late. A voice broke the silence behind him. Sir? Ethan turned. One of the junior security officers, Mark, stood a few feet away, shifting his weight. She's heading out in about 10 minutes, Mark said carefully. Just so you know. Ethan nodded. Thanks. Mark hesitated. Do you want us to? No, Ethan said quickly. Then softer, no changes. Mark left. Ethan stayed. 10 minutes passed. Then the door opened. Lena stepped out, phone in hand, coat over her arm. She stopped when she saw him. Just for half a second. Not startled, not angry. Guarded. Yes, she asked. The word was polite, empty. I won't take long, Ethan said. I don't have time, she replied evenly, already stepping past him. He moved with her, not blocking her path, just matching her pace down the hallway. You asked me not to complicate things, he said. I'm trying not to. That's new, she said without looking at him. It wasn't cruel, that hurt more. They reached the elevator. She pressed the button. Silence stretched. I was wrong, Ethan said finally. Yesterday wasn't enough. The elevator dinged. Doors open. She stepped inside. He followed. The doors closed with a soft click, sealing them in. Lena crossed her arms loosely, eyes on the digital numbers above the door. You don't get points for realizing that late, she said. I know. She glanced at him then, brows lifting slightly. Do you? Yes. The elevator descended. Because from where I'm standing, she continued calmly, you showed restraint when it cost you nothing. And when it finally cost you something, your image, your authority, you acted. That's not fair, he said. She looked at him fully now. Neither was being dismissed in a room full of people while the man assigned to protect me stayed silent. His jaw tightened. I was told not to interfere unless there was a direct threat. She smiled faintly. Not humor. Recognition. There it is, she said. Procedure. The elevator slowed. I thought I was respecting your autonomy, Ethan said. You didn't need me stepping in every time someone underestimated you. I didn't need silence either, she replied. There's a difference. The doors opened into the parking level. She stepped out. Ethan followed again. Lena, he said, quieter now. What do you want from me? She stopped walking. That was new. She turned slowly, studying him like she was deciding how honest to be and whether he could handle it. I wanted consistency, she said. I wanted to know that if I looked to my left, you'd be there. Not calculating. Not weighing risks. Her voice softened, just a fraction. I wanted to feel covered. The word landed between them. Protected. Seen. Back. Ethan swallowed. I am there. She shook her head. You weren't. And now I've adjusted. That scared him more than anger ever could. She reached her car. Ethan stopped a few feet away, respecting the boundary she hadn't verbally set, but had clearly drawn. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said, but I need you to know I won't make that mistake again. She opened her car door. That's the problem, she said gently. You needed to know it then. She got in. Before closing the door, she looked at him one last time. You didn't lose me because you didn't care, she said. You lost me because you waited. The door shut. The engine started. Ethan stood there as she drove away, the late afternoon light fading into something colder. He had protected her too late. And now restraint wasn't noble. It was punishment. The corridor outside the conference wing was almost empty by the time Lena realized something was wrong. Not wrong in the obvious way: no alarms, no shouting, no panic. The event had gone smoothly. Too smoothly. The kind of smooth that felt curated, engineered. The kind that left a hollow quiet in its wake. She slowed her steps. The security detail was thinner than expected. Faces she didn't recognize stood where familiar ones should have been. A man at the end of the hall nodded once, subtle, respectful, and stepped aside as she passed. That was when she saw Ethan. He stood near the service exit, half in shadow, his suit jacket open, shirt rumpled at the shoulder. There was a thin line of red at his temple, already drying. His jaw was tight, eyes focused somewhere past her, like he was keeping watch even now. Like he hadn't stopped. Lena's breath caught before she could stop it. She turned fully toward him. Ethan? He looked at her then. Not startled, not defensive. Just tired. Everything okay? He asked, voice steady, professional, too controlled. She took a step closer. Then another. Her heels echoed too loudly on the marble floor. You're bleeding. It's nothing. That's not an answer. A pause. The smallest exhale. I walked into a door, he said. She stared at him. You expect me to believe that? His mouth twitched, not quite a smile. You expect me to explain? That did it. Something sharp and hot flared in her chest. You weren't supposed to be here, she said quietly. I know. You weren't assigned. I know. You didn't have clearance. I know. Each answer landed like a confession without the vulnerability. Lena folded her arms, more to steady herself than anything else. Then why are you standing here like you've been holding your breath for the last 3 hours? For the first time, his composure cracked. Not dramatically, not visibly. But his gaze dropped from her eyes to her shoulder, then the floor, as if looking at her directly might cost him something he wasn't sure he could afford. Because, he said slowly, old habits are hard to kill. Her voice softened despite herself. You said you wouldn't interfere. I didn't. She let out a short laugh, humorless. Ethan. I didn't, he repeated, firmer now. You chose visibility. I respected that. I didn't change your route. I didn't pull you from the event. I didn't speak to your team. I didn't touch your decisions. Then what did you do? He hesitated. That alone was answer enough. She stepped closer again, lowering her voice. What did you do? His shoulders squared, not in defense but resolve. I made sure you never had to find out what almost happened. The words settled between them, heavy and cold. Lena's throat tightened. You don't get to decide that for me. I didn't decide for you, he said. I decided for myself. She frowned. That doesn't make sense. It does if you understand the difference. She searched his face, really looked at him now, the cut, the tension in his stance, the way one hand flexed unconsciously like it still expected a weapon. You put yourself in harm's way, she said. Yes. Without telling me. Yes. After I made it very clear I didn't want, her voice faltered. She tried again. I didn't want to be managed. I know. Then why? Finally he met her eyes. Because this wasn't about power. It was about restraint finally snapping, not into possession, but sacrifice. Because you didn't ask for protection, he said quietly. You asked for respect. The hallway seemed to narrow around them. And respecting you, he continued, meant letting you walk forward without pulling you back. It didn't mean I had to stop caring whether you made it there safely. Something in her chest cracked. Not open, not fully. Just enough to hurt. You could have been seriously hurt, she said. So could you. That's not the same. It is when the alternative is doing nothing. She looked away, blinking fast. You don't get to martyr yourself and call it respect. I'm not asking you to thank me. Good, she snapped, then softened immediately. Because I don't know what to do with this. Neither did he. They stood there, the space between them charged but contained. No touching, no confessions. Just truth circling something dangerous and unspoken. Finally, she asked, almost to herself, why didn't you tell me afterward? His answer came without hesitation. Because the moment I tell you, it becomes leverage. Gratitude. Obligation. His jaw tightened. And I won't be another man who protects you, so you owe him something. Her breath shuddered. That's not fair, she whispered. You don't get to be noble and distant at the same time. His eyes darkened. I don't get to be anything. I get to choose what kind of man I am when you're watching and when you're not. Silence stretched. Then quietly she said, you scared me. He stilled. I didn't know, she went on, voice trembling now, and I hate that part of me feels relieved instead of angry. He took a step back, just one, like proximity was suddenly dangerous. You don't have to feel anything, he said. I already do. That landed harder than any accusation. For a moment, it felt like something might finally spill over words, hands, a confession neither of them was ready to survive. But footsteps echoed from the far end of the hall. Reality intruded. Lena straightened, masking the ache with composure. You should get that looked at. I will. She hesitated, then added, next time don't disappear into the background like that. His brow furrowed. Are you asking me to stay? No, she said honestly. I'm asking you not to vanish. A beat. I can do that, he said. Not I promise. Not I want to. Just, I can. She nodded once, then turned and walked away before the moment could demand more. Ethan watched her go, chest tight, knowing one thing with terrifying clarity. He hadn't confessed. But he had crossed a line he could never uncross. And for the first time, restraint hadn't protected him at all. The next morning, Ethan changed the rules. Not the official ones. The quiet ones. Lena noticed it before noon. The elevator that usually took her straight to her office now required a secondary clearance. Her schedule, once flexible, arrived pre-approved, color-coded, and locked. Her assistant looked confused when Lena asked about it. Security revised the protocols overnight, she said. Mr. Cross signed off. Ethan? Lena stared at the tablet, jaw tight. He didn't mention this to me. The assistant hesitated. He said you wouldn't like it. That almost made her laugh. Almost. By mid-afternoon, it was undeniable. She couldn't step outside the building without an escort. Couldn't reroute her car last minute. Couldn't dismiss security with a look anymore. Not once did Ethan appear. That was the worst part. He didn't hover. Didn't explain. Didn't soften it with presence. He enforced distance like a punishment for both of them. By the time she finally tracked him down, it was after hours. The executive floor was quiet, lights dimmed to evening mode. Ethan stood inside the glass-walled security office, jacket off, sleeves rolled, hands braced on the table as he spoke low and intense into a calm unit. Lena didn't knock. She walked in. He looked up instantly and froze. The room went still. You restricted my movement, she said. He dismissed the channel without breaking eye contact. Yes. You locked my autonomy behind 3 layers of clearance. Yes. You didn't tell me. No. Her voice sharpened. You don't get to make decisions about me because you're scared. Something dangerous flickered across his face. This isn't fear, he said quietly. Oh? She stepped closer. Then what is it? Control. But not the kind she thought. He straightened, hands dropping to his sides. It's responsibility. I didn't give you that. You didn't have to. His voice hardened. Someone tried to get close enough to hurt you. That makes this bigger than preference. She crossed her arms. So your solution is to cage me? No. He met her gaze head on. My solution is to make sure you're alive long enough to hate me for it. The words hit harder than they should have. You think I don't understand risk? She demanded. You think I built my life without learning how dangerous visibility is? I think, he said carefully, that you underestimate how personal this just became. Her breath caught. Personal? That was a mistake. Because now he was too honest. Someone crossed a line, he said. Which means they weren't testing you. They were testing me. Silence. That's not comforting, she said finally. It's not meant to be. She looked at him, then really looked. The restraint. The exhaustion. The way he was standing farther away than necessary, like proximity was something he no longer trusted himself with. You're punishing yourself, she said softly. His jaw clenched. I'm containing damage. To whom? A beat too long. Everyone, he said. She stepped closer anyway. You can't protect me by erasing me, she said. And you can't push me away without consequences either. He didn't move. I'm not asking for recklessness, she continued. I'm asking to be part of the decision. You were, he said. Last night. That wasn't a decision. That was an aftermath. Their eyes locked. The air felt too tight, too charged. Finally, he said, lower now, if I loosen control and something happens, I won't blame you. That's not the point. Then what is? His voice dropped. I won't survive it. The truth of that landed like a bruise. Lena swallowed. You don't get to decide that either. No, he agreed quietly, but I get to live with it. For a moment, it felt like they were standing at the edge of something irreversible. Then she said, very softly, I don't want distance, Ethan. I want honesty. His gaze flicked to her mouth just for a second. Then back to her eyes. That's more dangerous than distance, he said. Maybe. But you're asking anyway. Yes. A long pause. Finally, he nodded once. Then we compromise. Her brow furrowed. How? You keep your visibility, he said. I keep proximity. Her pulse skipped. You said you wouldn't hover. I didn't say I'd disappear. That wasn't a confession. But it was a line redrawn. The gala was supposed to be controlled chaos. That was how Ethan had described it. Too many people, too many exits, too much noise for anything precise to happen, which was exactly why he hated it. Lena stepped out of the car beneath a canopy of light and flashbulbs, the city humming behind her. The dress wasn't dramatic, sleek, understated, but it clung in a way that made Ethan's jaw tighten the second he saw her. He shouldn't notice that. He noticed anyway. Stay close, he murmured, already scanning the perimeter. I always do, she replied lightly. That earned him a look. Not playful, not defiant. Aware. They moved inside together, not touching, but aligned, his body instinctively angling just enough to shield her from the press of people. Cameras snapped. Voices rose. Music swelled. For 10 minutes, everything held. Then Ethan felt it. A shift. Not noise. Not movement. Intent. Lena, he said quietly, don't turn around. She stilled. Ethan. Just walk, he continued, calm but tight. Straight ahead. Don't speed up. Her pulse jumped. She felt it instantly, the way his presence sharpened, coiled. She obeyed without question, heels clicking against marble as they crossed the main floor. What is it? She asked under her breath. Someone's out of place. That was all he said. They reached the corridor leading toward the private lounge when the lights flickered. Once. Twice. And then. Chaos. A sharp crack echoed through the hall. Not a gunshot, but close enough to make people scream. The crowd surged, bodies colliding, panic blooming fast and ugly. Ethan moved without thinking. He grabbed Lena's wrist and yanked her into him, turning his body as a shield as they were slammed sideways by fleeing guests. Ethan. Move, he ordered, voice hard now. They didn't run. He guided her fast, controlled down a service hallway as shouts erupted behind them. A second crack sounded, closer this time. Lena's breath came shallow. Is this? Keep your head down. They reached a door marked authorized personnel only. Ethan shoved it open and pulled her inside just as something struck the wall where her head had been a second earlier. Concrete dust exploded. Lena gasped. The door slammed shut behind them. Ethan locked it, bracing his shoulder against it as voices thundered past on the other side. For a moment, there was only the sound of their breathing. Then Lena realized. His hands were on her. One gripping her waist. The other braced above her head against the wall. He was close. Too close. His chest rose inches from hers, his breath warm against her cheek. She could feel his heart racing. Are you hurt? He asked, scanning her face, her shoulders, her arms. No, she said shakily. Are you? His jaw tightened. I'm fine. She didn't believe him. You pulled me into the line of fire. Yes. Why? His eyes snapped to hers. Because that's where I go. The words landed heavy. She swallowed. That's not fair. Neither is losing you. Silence. Something in his voice, raw, stripped, made her chest ache. You said you wouldn't erase me, she said softly. This feels like you trying to decide my life without me again. His hand flexed at her waist. This, he gestured vaguely to the muffled chaos outside, is exactly why I can't afford distance. And what about me? She whispered. Do I get a choice in how close you stand? His gaze dropped to her mouth before he caught himself and looked away. This isn't the time. That's what you always say. A shout echoed down the corridor. Boots pounded closer. Ethan shifted instantly, stepping in front of her again, body tense. If that door opens, he said low, you run when I tell you. Do not wait for me. No. Lena. I won't leave you. He turned, eyes blazing. That's an order. And this, she shot back, is me refusing. For a second, he looked stunned. Then almost against his will something in his expression softened. You're impossible, he muttered. And you, she said, stepping closer again, are not as in control as you think. The door rattled. Ethan cursed under his breath, reached behind him, and pressed something cold and solid into her hand. Take this. A gun? Her eyes widened. Safety off. Point and pull only if you have to. You're trusting me with a weapon now? I trust you with my life. The words hung between them unplanned, unguarded. The rattling stopped. Voices faded. Slowly the danger ebbed. Ethan didn't move right away, neither did she. Finally, he exhaled and lowered his arm, stepping back just enough for space, but not enough for distance. That was too close, she said quietly. Yes. And you didn't let go. His voice dropped. No. Their eyes locked again, the moment stretched thin as wire. If one of them moved. A sharp knock broke the tension. Security, a voice called softly. Mr. Cross. Ethan stepped away instantly, the wall snapping back into place. He opened the door, barked orders, restored control like it had never slipped. But Lena watched him. And she knew. Whatever this was becoming. It wasn't just protection anymore. And it was already costing him more than he was willing to admit. The first thing Lena noticed was the silence. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that rang too loud after chaos. The kind that pressed against her ears and made her heart feel like it was still running, even though her body had stopped. They were in the service corridor beneath the west wing, concrete walls, emergency lights buzzing overhead. Ethan had pushed her there minutes ago, one hand gripping her wrist, the other already on his earpiece, voice sharp and controlled as he barked orders. Perimeter breach neutralized. Lockdown level C. Sweep again now. His grip on her loosened only after the words left his mouth. Are you hurt? He asked, already scanning her, eyes moving with practiced efficiency from her face to her arms to her legs. I know. I don't think so. Her voice sounded thin to her own ears. What just happened? A distraction, he said. Not accidental. That landed harder than the gunshot she'd heard seconds earlier. She swallowed. You said the threat level was low. It was, he replied. Then quieter, sharper, it isn't anymore. Before she could respond, another voice echoed down the corridor. Sir, media vans are already circling. Someone tipped them off. Ethan's jaw tightened. Get her out of sight, the guard continued. If they see her now. They won't, Ethan cut in. He stepped slightly in front of Lena, body angled like a shield even though the danger had already passed. Clear a secure room. No windows. No access points. Yes, sir. The footsteps retreated. The silence returned. Lena let out a shaky breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Her hands were trembling now that the adrenaline was draining, and she pressed them together, embarrassed by how visible it was. Ethan noticed anyway. Sit, he said gently, nodding toward a low concrete bench along the wall. I'm fine. That wasn't a suggestion. She gave him a look half defiance, half exhaustion, but sat. The moment she did, her knees felt weak and she hated that he'd been right. Ethan crouched in front of her, close enough that she could see the faint cut along his hairline now, blood dark against his skin. Her breath caught. You're bleeding. It's nothing. You say that a lot, she shot back, reaching out before she could stop herself. He froze. Her fingers hovered inches from his forehead. Slowly, deliberately, he lifted his gaze to hers. The intensity there wasn't anger, it was restraint, tightly wound and fraying at the edges. "Lena," he said quietly. "Don't." She hesitated. "You're hurt because of me." His jaw flexed. "I'm hurt because someone tried to scare you." "That's not the same thing." "It is to me." The words slipped out before he could stop them. He seemed to realize it immediately, straightening slightly, professional walls snapping back into place. But it was too late. She saw at the crack. "You didn't have to step in front of me," she said softly. "Yes, I did." "No," she insisted. "You could have moved me first." "I didn't have time." "Or you didn't think." That did it. He rose to his full height, pacing once like a caged animal before stopping in front of her again. "You want honesty?" he asked, voice low. "Fine. I didn't think. I reacted. That's my job." "That's not all it is," she said. His eyes snapped to hers. "You don't get to decide that." "Then stop acting like it," she challenged, heart pounding. "You don't get to look at me like that and pretend this is just protocol." Silence stretched between them, thick and electric. Ethan exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. "This is exactly why I shouldn't be here with you like this." "And yet," Lena said, standing now, closer than she meant to be, "you are." For a moment, it felt like the whole world held its breath. The corridor lights flickered faintly. Ethan looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time and like he was terrified of what that meant. "This doesn't end well," he said. "I didn't ask how it ends." That was when something in him broke. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just enough. He stepped closer, not invading her space, but erasing the excuse of distance. She could feel his warmth now, the tension rolling off him, the way he was holding himself rigid like any movement might unravel him completely. "Tell me to stop," he said, voice barely more than a breath. She didn't answer. She tilted her chin up. Ethan leaned in slowly, deliberately, as if giving her time to pull away. His forehead brushed hers first, the contact so light it sent a shiver down her spine. Then his lips touched hers. Soft, careful, almost reverent. It wasn't hunger, it was recognition. The kiss lingered in that fragile space, tentative and suspended, until Lena exhaled against him, her fingers curling into the front of his jacket as if she needed something to hold onto. That was all it took. His hand came up to her cheek, cupping it gently, thumb tracing her jaw like he was memorizing her. The kiss deepened, not rushed, not reckless, but full of everything he'd been holding back. Too long. Lena melted into it before she could think better of it. The world narrowed to sensation, the warmth of him, the steady pressure of his hand at her waist, the way his breath hitched when she leaned closer. He kissed her like someone who had already lost the argument with himself. When they finally pulled apart, it was slow, reluctant, foreheads touching, breaths uneven. Ethan didn't let go. "That changes things," he said hoarsely. "Yes," Lena whispered. "It does." His eyes closed briefly, as if that truth cost him something real. When he opened them, the intensity was still there, tempered now by resolve. "I'll protect you," he said, "but after this nothing is simple anymore." She didn't step back. Neither did he. Morning came without mercy. Lena woke to pale light filtering through unfamiliar curtains and the dull ache of memory pressing behind her eyes. For a few seconds, she lay still, disoriented, listening to the hum of air conditioning and the distant murmur of voices beyond the door. Then it all came back. The corridor. The gunshot. The kiss. Her chest tightened. She sat up slowly, the sheet sliding down to her waist. The room was clearly a secure guest suite, tasteful, impersonal, chosen for safety rather than comfort. No personal touches. No warmth. No Ethan. She pressed her lips together, a hand rising unconsciously to her mouth as if the imprint of him might still be there. The kiss hadn't been frantic. That almost made it worse. It had been careful, meaningful, real. A soft knock sounded at the door. "Ms. Carter?" A woman's voice called. "May I come in?" Lena cleared her throat. "Yes." The door opened to reveal a security officer holding a tablet. "Good morning. I'm here to escort you to breakfast, and to inform you that Director Hale has requested limited contact for the next 48 hours. The words landed like ice water. "Limited contact?" Lena repeated. "Yes, ma'am. It's standard protocol following a breach. For your safety. Of course it was. She nodded, forcing calm into her voice. Thank you. When the door closed again, the room felt colder. Ethan hadn't slept. He stood in the briefing room with a cup of untouched coffee growing cold in his hand, eyes fixed on the security footage paused on the main screen. Not the breach. The corridor. The angle was grainy, the sound non-existent, but the moment was unmistakable. Two figures too close. A hand on a cheek. Heads bowed together in a way that had nothing to do with procedure. He looked away. Sir, one of the analysts said carefully, we've identified 3 possible sources for the leak. Handle it, Ethan said, sharper than intended. The room went quiet. He exhaled, dragging a hand down his face. Sorry, just handle it. The analyst nodded and continued. Ethan heard none of it. All he could think about was the way Lena's breath had hitched when he'd kissed her. The way she hadn't hesitated. The way he had. God. He'd crossed a line. Not just professionally, personally. He'd known better. He always knew better. And yet. A knock came at the door. Director Hale? She's asking for you. His heart stuttered. Tell her. He stopped himself. Closed his eyes briefly. Tell her I'm unavailable. The pause on the other end was loaded. She said you might say that. Of course she did. She asked me to give you this, the aide added, holding out a folded note. Ethan took it slowly, as if it might burn him. It was simple. 1 line, written in Lena's handwriting. I wish you'd look at me the way you did last night, even just once more. His throat tightened. He folded the note carefully and slipped it into his pocket like a secret he didn't deserve to keep. Breakfast was quiet. Lena sat across from 2 guards who pretended not to watch her too closely. She pushed food around her plate, appetite gone, every nerve tuned to the door that never opened. She hadn't expected Ethan to show up. But she'd hoped. The kiss replayed in her mind with cruel clarity, not just the feeling of his lips, but the conflict in his eyes afterward. The way he'd held on like letting go would cost him something. Maybe it already had. She excused herself early and returned to the suite, pacing like a caged thing. Finally, unable to stand it, she pulled a pen from the desk and wrote the note. It felt pathetic. Honest. Necessary. When it was gone, the waiting began. They crossed paths that afternoon in the hallway outside the operations floor. It wasn't planned. That almost made it worse. Ethan rounded the corner and stopped short when he saw her. For half a second, the mask slipped, something raw and unmistakable flashing across his face. Then the walls slammed back up. Ms. Carter, he said formally. Director Hale, she replied, matching his tone. The air between them crackled. I trust you slept well, he continued, voice steady. Yes, she said. Did you? His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I'm glad you're safe, he said instead. She studied him, the crisp suit, the controlled posture, the man who looked exactly like he had before everything changed. Except his eyes. I meant what I wrote, she said quietly. He glanced around the corridor, then lowered his voice. You shouldn't have. I know. That wasn't appropriate. I know, she repeated, softer. Neither was pretending it didn't happen. Something flickered in him, pain, frustration, longing, all tangled together. You think I don't replay it? He asked, just as quietly. You think I don't regret it? Her heart sank. You regret me? No, he said immediately. Too fast. Too honest. I regret that I can't afford to want you. The words hurt because they were careful. Because they were true. She nodded, swallowing. Then I guess we're both pretending for a while. Yes, he said. For your safety. For yours, she corrected. Their eyes held for one last, loaded second. Then Ethan stepped back, creating distance this time, choosing it. Take her back to the suite, he ordered the nearby guard. We move her tonight. Tonight? Lena echoed. He met her gaze once more, something apologetic and aching there. The closer you are to me, the more dangerous this becomes. As she was led away, she didn't look back. Ethan did. And the regret sat heavy in his chest, not because he'd kissed her, but because walking away felt worse. The nights were the hardest. Lena learned that quickly. During the day, there were schedules and briefings and polite check-ins from people who meant well. There was structure, movement, purpose, distraction. She could almost pretend she wasn't waiting for something she knew wouldn't come. But at night, the silence pressed in. She stood on the balcony of the secure residence long after the city lights blurred into a sea of gold below, arms wrapped around herself, the cool air biting just enough to keep her grounded. Somewhere out there, Ethan was awake too. She knew it the way she knew when storms were coming, an instinct she hadn't asked for but couldn't ignore. She wondered if he was standing at a window like this, or if he was deliberately avoiding them now. Her phone buzzed once. Her breath caught before she even checked. Security update. Nothing personal. She laughed quietly at herself, the sound brittle. Get a grip, she whispered into the night. But her fingers still hovered over the screen, half expecting his name to appear through sheer force of want. It never did. Ethan slept in fragments. Short, shallow stretches that left him more exhausted than rest ever could. When he closed his eyes, his mind betrayed him, replaying moments he should have filed away as mistakes. The brush of Lena's fingers against his jacket. The way she had tilted her chin up, trusting him. The warmth of her breath against his mouth. He sat up abruptly one night, jaw clenched, pulse racing. Idiot, he muttered. He knew better than this. Knew exactly where this road ended. He crossed the room and stopped in front of the window. City lights stretched beneath him like a map of choices he refused to make. Somewhere across that distance she was sleeping or trying to. He wondered if she felt abandoned. The thought hollowed him out. On the third day of separation, Lena found herself in the gym. Not because she wanted to work out, because the ache in her chest needed somewhere to go. She pushed herself too hard, muscles burning, breath ragged, until her trainer gently suggested a break. She nodded, grateful for the excuse to stop before she broke down instead. As she toweled off, she caught her reflection in the mirror, flushed, eyes bright with unshed emotion. This is ridiculous, she told herself. She wasn't heartbroken. She wasn't naive. She barely knew him outside of crisis and command. And yet, the door to the gym opened. Her heart leapt before reason could intervene. It wasn't Ethan. Disappointment hit sharper than she expected. She left early. Ethan read her reports obsessively. Every detail. How long she slept, what she ate, whether she smiled in public. He justified it as vigilance, as duty. But when his deputy finally said, "You're not her shadow anymore, sir," Ethan knew the truth. He was watching because distance hadn't erased the pull. It had sharpened it. She's restless, the deputy added, glancing at the tablet. Doesn't stay in one place long. Ethan's throat tightened. She's not a prisoner. No, the man agreed carefully. But she feels like one. That night, Ethan drafted a message he never sent. You don't have to stay there if you don't want to. He deleted it. Then wrote another. I miss talking to you. Deleted. Finally, he typed the truth. I'm doing this because I don't trust myself to choose you over the job. He stared at the words until they blurred. Then he locked the phone and set it face down, like it might accuse him if he didn't. They passed each other again 5 days later. A narrow hallway, a controlled environment, no privacy. Lena felt him before she saw him, her body reacting instantly, traitorously. Her steps faltered just slightly. Ethan noticed. Their eyes met. Everything unsaid rushed in. Good afternoon, he said, formal to the point of cruelty. Director, she replied. The guards moved ahead, giving them a few precious seconds of space. You look tired, she said softly. So do you. A pause. I hate this, she admitted. His jaw tightened. So do I. Then why? Because wanting you, he interrupted quietly, makes me reckless. The honesty stole her breath. She searched his face for softness, for regret, for anything that would let her step closer. She found restraint instead. I won't chase you, she said, but I won't pretend this didn't matter either. His eyes darkened. It mattered. That was all he allowed himself. The guards returned. The moment ended. They walked away in opposite directions, both feeling the same truth settle deep and heavy. Distance hadn't lessened the connection. It had only taught them how much it hurt to deny it. Ethan discovered that silence had a sound. It was the hum of lights in an empty office long after everyone else had gone home. The echo of his own footsteps in corridors he used to command without thinking. The absence of a voice that had begun without his permission to anchor his days. He hadn't expected it to be this bad. He stood at the window of his office, city spread beneath him like a living thing, and tried to remember what his nights had been like before Lena. They had been efficient, purposeful, quiet in a way that never bothered him. Now the quiet clawed. He checked his phone. Nothing. He told himself that was good. He started running again, harder, longer. It didn't help. The streets blurred past him in the early mornings, breath tearing from his lungs, muscles screaming, as he pushed himself beyond reason. He ran until his body gave him pain loud enough to drown out thought. But every time he slowed, every time he stopped, she was there. The memory of her laughter, soft, surprised, like she hadn't expected joy to find her. The way she argued with him, not loudly but with precision, cutting through his authority without ever raising her voice. He missed that most. That she hadn't been afraid of him. At work, he was sharp. Impeccable. Too impeccable. His team noticed. "You don't need to review every line," his deputy said carefully during one briefing. "Yes, I do," Ethan replied without looking up. He stayed later than necessary, corrected things that didn't need correcting, wrote reports already approved. Busy work. Distraction. Failure. He caught himself glancing toward the doorway during meetings, half expecting her to be there, arms crossed, eyebrow lifted, silently daring him to make sense. She never was. He passed the corridor where they'd kissed. He didn't stop. But his step slowed. The concrete wall looked the same. The lights still flickered faintly. Anyone else would have walked through without noticing anything special. Ethan felt the memory hit like a physical blow. The warmth of her cheek under his palm. The way she'd leaned into him not because she needed protection, but because she wanted him. His throat tightened. He pressed a hand briefly to the wall, then forced himself to move. Nights were worse. His apartment was immaculate and unbearable. No noise. No interruptions. No reason to speak. He poured a drink he barely touched, standing at the counter, replaying conversations that meant more now than they had when they happened. "You don't get to decide my feelings for me. I won't pretend this didn't matter." He sat on the edge of the bed and laughed quietly, humorless. "Congratulations," he muttered. "You did the right thing." It had never felt so wrong. He drafted messages he never sent. "Did you eat today? Are they treating you well? I miss you." That last one stayed on the screen longest. He stared at it until his eyes burned. Then he deleted it. Because missing her didn't give him the right to reach for her. Because wanting her didn't mean he deserved her. The worst moment came unexpectedly. A joke, told by someone else, in a meeting she used to attend. It was sharp, dry, exactly her kind of humor. Ethan smiled without thinking. The smile faded when he realized why it had come so easily. The room went on without noticing. He sat there, hands folded, heart heavy, and understood something with painful clarity. Lena hadn't disrupted his life. She had revealed it. And without her, everything returned to its original order, controlled, disciplined, empty. That night, as he stood alone in the dark, city lights flickering like distant stars, Ethan finally admitted the truth he'd been avoiding since the moment he'd let her walk away. Protecting her had been easy. Living without her was not. It happened close to midnight. Ethan had already turned off the lights in his apartment, already gone through the ritual of pretending sleep was possible. The city outside was quieter than usual, rain tapping softly against the glass like a question he refused to answer. His phone buzzed once on the nightstand. His heart reacted before his mind did. He reached for it too fast, then froze when he saw the name. Lena. For a second, the world narrowed to that single word glowing on the screen. His pulse thundered in his ears. His fingers hovered just above the phone, close enough that he could feel the vibration still humming through it. She was calling him. Not texting, calling. Something was wrong. He snatched the phone up before he could think better of it and stopped. His thumb hovered over the answer button. This was the line. If he crossed it, there was no pretending this was still about protocol or distance or safety. If he answered, he wouldn't be Director Hale. He wouldn't be her shield from afar. He would be the man who wanted her. The phone buzzed again, longer this time. Ethan closed his eyes. You don't get to want her when you're the danger, he told himself. You don't get to reach just because it hurts. The call went to voicemail. The silence afterward was brutal. He stared at the dark screen, chest tight, every instinct screaming at him to call her back. His hand shook once, just once, before he curled it into a fist and lowered it to his lap. A moment passed. Then another buzz. A message this time. Lena, I know it's late. I won't call again. I just needed to hear your voice. I'm sorry. Something in him cracked. He stood abruptly, pacing the length of the room like a caged animal. Don't apologize, he muttered into the empty space. You didn't do anything wrong. He typed. Are you safe? Deleted it. I'm here. Deleted. I shouldn't have let you. Deleted. His reflection stared back at him from the darkened window, controlled, composed, utterly wrecked. The phone buzzed again. Lena, it's stupid. Nothing happened. Tonight feels heavy. He swallowed hard. Tonight feels heavy. He knew that weight. It had been sitting in his chest for days, growing sharper, more insistent. He imagined her alone in that too quiet house, sitting on the edge of a bed just like this one, holding her phone like it might give her answers. He pressed the phone to his forehead, eyes burning. One call, he whispered. One call and it all collapses. He started typing again, slower this time. I can't be the person you reach for right now. His thumb hesitated. He added the truth he hadn't allowed himself to say. Because if I am, I won't stop. He stared at the message for a long time. Then, against every instinct screaming in protest, he locked the phone and set it face down. The room felt unbearably quiet. Minutes passed. No new messages. The realization hit slowly, cruelly. She'd reached out because she needed him. And he had chosen not to be there. Ethan sank onto the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, head bowed. His breath came shallow, uneven, like he'd just survived something instead of caused it. This is what you wanted, he said hoarsely. Distance. The word tasted like hash. His phone buzzed once more. Voicemail notification. He didn't play it. He couldn't trust himself not to shatter if he heard her voice. Instead, he lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rain and the echo of everything he'd chosen not to say. Across the city, Lena would wake tomorrow believing he didn't care enough to answer. And Ethan would let her. Because wanting her wasn't the hard part. Letting her go when every part of him was screaming not to was. Ethan didn't give himself time to rethink it. The moment the door closed behind him, the world narrowed to the space between them, the quiet thrum of the house, the soft catch in Lena's breath, the way she stood frozen as if she couldn't quite believe he was real. I shouldn't be here, he said, voice low and strained, like the words were being pulled out of him. She didn't step back. That was all the permission he needed. When he kissed her this time, it was slower for half a heartbeat, just enough to feel the warmth of her, the unmistakable reality of her body beneath his hands before the restraint he'd been clinging to collapsed entirely. The kiss turned urgent, hungry, fueled by everything he hadn't allowed himself to say. Lena made a small, startled sound against his mouth, fingers fisting in the front of his jacket like she was afraid he might vanish if she let go. The sound went straight through him. His hand slid to her waist, steadying her, anchoring himself just as much as her. I tried, he murmured against her lips, the words uneven. I tried to stay away. Her answer was another kiss, fierce, almost angry, like she was making him feel every second of the silence he'd left her in. The door was still warm at his back. The world outside might as well have stopped existing. Ethan pressed his forehead to hers, breath heavy, eyes closed. For a moment, he just stood there, holding her like this was something fragile instead of dangerous. You called me, he said quietly. And I told myself I was doing the right thing by not answering. Lena's hand slid up his arms, slow, deliberate, grounding. And did it feel right? No, he admitted without hesitation. It felt like losing you. Her throat worked as she swallowed. I thought I imagined what happened between us. I thought maybe it was just fear. He pulled back just enough to look at her properly, really look, her flushed cheeks, her unsteady breathing, the way her eyes searched his face for honesty. This? He said, brushing his thumb along her jaw, the touch reverent now. This isn't fear. He kissed her again, not rushing this time. The hunger was still there, but it was layered with something deeper: care, need, the quiet devastation of wanting someone you know you're not supposed to have. She leaned into him fully now, the last of her hesitation melting away. The kiss softened, lingered. It felt like a question neither of them wanted to ask out loud. When they finally broke apart, the silence between them was loud with everything they hadn't said. "This changes things," Lena whispered again, like she was afraid to say it too loudly. Ethan rested his forehead against hers, eyes still closed, breathing her in like he was memorizing her. "I know. You can't pretend this didn't happen." "I'm not pretending anymore," he said. His voice was rough, stripped bare. "I don't know how to protect you and want you at the same time. But I know I can't do neither." Her hands stilled on his chest, feeling his heartbeat racing beneath her palm. "Then stay," she said softly. "Not an order. Not a demand. Just truth." He hesitated just a second. Then he nodded. He didn't kiss her again right away. He just held her, arms wrapped around her like he'd been holding himself together for weeks, and finally let go. And for the first time since the danger began, the fear wasn't about what might happen next. It was about how much they'd already lost trying to stay apart. Ethan didn't stay the night. That, more than anything else, told Lena this wasn't a fantasy. They stood in the doorway just before dawn, the city still dark, both of them quiet in that fragile, aftershock stillness where everything feels exposed. "I'll come back later," he said, already putting distance between them even as his eyes lingered. "Once things settle." Lena didn't argue. She knew what that look meant. He wasn't running, he was bracing for impact. And impact came fast. By mid-morning, the kiss was no longer just theirs. It started with a closed-door meeting Ethan was summoned to without explanation. Too early, too formal, too quiet. When you walked in, he knew. 3 people. Legal, internal oversight, security, ethics. "Director Hale," one of them said, gesturing for him to sit. "We've received a concern." Not an accusation. Worse. A concern. They didn't say Lena's name at first. They didn't need to. "Your proximity decisions regarding the protected party have been flagged as inconsistent." Ethan didn't deny it. He didn't explain either. That silence spoke volumes. Lena found out an hour later from someone who wasn't supposed to tell her. "They're reviewing him," the aide whispered, eyes wide. Quietly, "but it's serious." Her chest tightened. This was her fault. No worse. This was the cost of being chosen. She didn't hesitate. She went straight to Ethan's office. Security tried to stop her. She didn't slow. When she pushed the door open, Ethan was standing by the window, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, looking like a man already calculating how much damage he could absorb before he broke. "You shouldn't be here," he said immediately. "I know," she replied. "That's why I am." Their eyes locked. For a split second, the night before flickered between them: heat, desperation, the way he'd looked at her like distance had finally failed. Then reality rushed back in. "They're investigating you because of me," she said. "They're investigating me because I made choices," he corrected. "Don't take that from me." She crossed the room anyway. "You could lose everything." His jaw tightened. "I've lost worse." "Ethan." That stopped him. He exhaled slowly, control slipping just enough to let the truth show. "I won't apologize for last night. I'm not asking you to. I won't pretend it didn't matter. I don't want you to." They stood too close. Again. Always again. But this time, the air was different, charged with consequence instead of longing. "If this gets worse," she said carefully, "they'll force you to step away. Permanently." "I know." "And if they do?" His gaze didn't waver. "Then I'll step away knowing I didn't abandon you." The words hit her harder than the kiss had. She swallowed. "You don't get to martyr yourself." A faint, humorless smile touched his mouth. "You don't get to decide what I'm willing to lose." The shift happened that afternoon. The threat resurfaced, not loud, not dramatic. Just a subtle change in patterns. A presence where there shouldn't have been one. Enough to justify immediate action. Enough to put Ethan back in charge. Protocol demanded proximity. This time, no one questioned it. As they were ushered into the armored vehicle together, Lena looked at him sideways. "Seems like the universe isn't done forcing us into the same space." Ethan didn't look away from the street ahead. Seems like it's testing whether we can survive it. Her hand brushed his by accident. Neither of them moved away. The story had crossed its midpoint now. No more pretending this was temporary. No more believing restraint would save them. What came next would demand a choice not between duty and desire, but between walking away or standing together when everything starts to fall apart. The threat didn't arrive with sirens or shouting. It slipped in quietly like all the most dangerous things did. Ethan felt it first. He always did. A delay in a scheduled movement, a communication lag that didn't fit the pattern, a name resurfacing in an encrypted report that should have stayed dormant. He didn't react outwardly. No raised voice. No sudden orders. He adjusted. By the time Lena was escorted into the operations wing, the situation was already unfolding with surgical precision. Screens lined the walls, glowing softly in the dim light. Analysts spoke in low, clipped tones. No panic. No spectacle. Lena noticed the difference immediately. Ethan wasn't standing in front of her. He stood beside her. Close enough that she could sense him without looking. Not shielding. Not hovering. Just present. "Here's what we know," he said, addressing the room. His voice was steady, authoritative but not rigid. "The window is narrow. If we move too fast, we spook him. Too slow, we lose him." Someone asked, "What's our margin for error?" Ethan didn't answer right away. He turned to Lena. "What do you see?" he asked. The room stilled. This wasn't protocol. This was trust. Lena took a breath, eye scanning the data. Patterns emerged. Gaps. Intent hiding in plain sight. "He's not planning to strike directly," she said slowly. "He wants proximity. Visibility. He wants to feel close without being seen." Ethan nodded once. "That tracks." They adjusted the plan together. Not her deferring. Not him overriding. Just collaboration. Hours passed. Decisions layered over decisions. When the final move was executed, it was clean. Controlled. The threat neutralized without escalation. No applause followed. Just a collective exhale. As the room emptied, Lena finally looked at Ethan. "You didn't step in front of me," she said quietly. He met her gaze. "You didn't need me to." Something settled between them then. Not romance. Not relief. Respect. This wasn't the end. But it was a turning point. The offer came the next morning. It was framed as reasonable. Almost kind. Ethan sat across from people who had known him for years, colleagues, superiors, observers who believed they understood him. "You've served with distinction," one of them said. "We want to preserve that." The terms were clear. He could remain in power. Remain respected. Remain untouched by scandal. All he had to do was remove Lena from his life completely. No contact. No exceptions. No ambiguity. Ethan didn't interrupt. When they finished, the room waited. He reached into his jacket and placed a document on the table. "I've already resigned," he said calmly. Silence hit like a dropped glass. "You're certain?" someone asked. "This isn't required." "No," Ethan replied, "but it's necessary." "For whom?" another voice pressed. "For me." He stood, nodded once, and walked out. He told Lena himself. Not over the phone. Not through someone else. They met somewhere neutral. Ordinary. A cafe with too much light and not enough drama. "They gave me a choice," he said after a moment. She already knew what he meant. "And you made it," she said. "Yes." Her chest tightened not with fear but with the weight of what he'd given up. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly. "I know." "Then why?" He looked at her not like a protector, not like a man asking for forgiveness. Like someone standing on equal ground. "Because I don't want a life where the only way I can exist is by erasing someone I care about." She swallowed. This wasn't a confession. It was something steadier. 9 months changed everything. Lena's life expanded again quietly, confidently. She wasn't defined by danger anymore. She moved freely, laughed freely, built something that belonged entirely to her. She wasn't searching the room when she saw him. That mattered. Ethan looked different, not diminished, not hardened, just lighter. No weight of authority clinging to him. No walls he needed to maintain. Their eyes met. Neither rushed. When they finally approached each other, it felt natural. Earned. "Hi," she said. "Hi," he answered, smiling. They talked easily. About time. About growth. About things that didn't ache anymore. Outside, the evening was calm. Ethan hesitated before speaking. "I don't know what comes next." Lena studied him, really studied him. Then she reached for his hand. "For the first time," she said quietly, "there's nothing between us that needs protecting." His fingers closed around hers. And this time, it wasn't out of duty. It was choice.